Good morning, everybody. A few familiar faces in the crowd, so hello to you, hello to the new guys and ladies who I haven't met before. As Richard said, I'm the veteran. I run at now, I think, 33 years in my career, the last 20 plus-ish in the MENA region. And I've seen some fascinating, exciting times. We've seen the growth of retail as a major sector. We've seen new cities. We've seen the major industrial zones, airport cities. The Middle East and MENA has been, for me, probably one of the most exciting places to work as a property person, bar none. And all of that's about to change. Because I believe that what we're about to see in the next 5 to 10 years is going to significantly impact almost everything we do. But let me take a step back. So at the beginning of this, I'll share with you the start of the journey. My journey started about 6 months ago. I sat down with the departments of hospitality, retail, research, the development solutions team who advised the master planners, the hospitality team, the industrial and logistics, office agents, and everybody. And I said, listen, what are the global trends? And the question was, what are the global trends? And then, are they here? So what's going on around the world? Has it arrived in Dubai yet? And importantly, what does it mean for us in the industry working here? What I got was a little bit more than expected. And the good news is that it's not all going to be in today's presentation, because over at Cityscape Exhibition, our team, our hospitality team, and our development solutions team are all giving separate presentations that are going to deep dive, I love these sort of trendy phrases, deep dive into those sectors for you. So I strongly recommend that you get down to the main exhibition and go to some of those talks. So what are the things that summarize what I'm going to talk about today and also what came back from the teams? Well, the first one was artificial intelligence, AI. What's happening in AI, and what does it mean to us? Second one was the flexible workspace, co-working for millennials, flexible workspace for other people. And the third one was a little bit surprising, because it is probably as dry as you can get, because it's about regulation changes, but not local, but global, that are going to have a significant impact on the way that we do our business and the way that we transact our business as well. Excuse me. So, let's start. Artificial intelligence is called the fourth revolution by the World Economic Forum. And Klaus Schwab, who is the chairman of the World Economic Forum, gave the following statement: "We stand on the brink of a technology revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we live, work, and relate to each other." And what's surprising is, when you scratch the surface of this, you realize it's already happening, we're already in it. So just going on from what Richard said, and thank you for the head count, Richard, it was quite interesting. About 25% of you said that it won't affect your jobs. So 2013, Carl Frey and Michael Osborne of Oxford University brought out this fantastic research report called The Future of Employment. And it tracked what jobs would be most affected in which industries and gave them percentage. The summary was this: a fully 47% of total US employment is at risk from AI and technology changes. So this half of the room, no, I quite like you. So this half of the room, you're out of work. This half of the room, you're still going. Well done. Where it gets a little bit more scary is in November last year, McKinsey said that 50% of our current work activities, so what me and you do every day, can already be done by existing technologies. That's not something that needs to be invented, it's already here. They go on to say that by 2030, of 60% of all occupations, a full third could be automated. Now, they are some quite scary numbers. So during my real estate career, there's always been the same that goes through it. And if we look at it, the same is supply, demand, finance, economics. They're the keystones of our market. They're what happens to us and how the market changes. I would now say to you that there is a fourth one, and that's the Industrial Revolution, the fourth Industrial Revolution, or AI, as I like to call it. If we look at the driving factors by themselves, let's go into the technology question a little bit more, because the fourth Industrial Revolution is technology-headed. So Andrew Baum of Oxford University, who back in the day when I was a student was writing books about how to invest in property, he came out with a really good report called PropTech 3.0, I think early last year, and I would recommend that you read it in terms of how it's going to affect your industry. Now, he lists and calculates a whole load of different ways that real estate will be impacted by technology. But he summarized it in three ways. Smart real estate, so that's how buildings operate. That's your building information system, that's how buildings talk to the interiors. You've got now Wi-Fi systems that will measure occupancy in rooms, which will then adjust the AC, which will then go back to the BIM systems, and all of this works. The second one he talks about is real estate fintech. Now, real estate fintech is a derivative of financial technology which has been around for a while. And fintech is your online banking. It is how you access your bank accounts and how you trade with your wireless credit cards. That's all the fintech market. Prop fintech is how we trade real estate. So in other words, how do I buy and sell real estate, and how do the financial derivatives attach to that? So that would include, I think we've got Dubizzle, for example, is an example of fintech, how you buy and lease property online. I know we've got a representative later on today talking about that market. It would talk about Bitcoin, how Bitcoin, for example, would fall under fintech. And I know we've got a representative talking about that today. So we've got a whole gamut for you. But the third element that he talks about is the shared economy. And that's how we use our real estate. That's how we combine our daily usage with our interaction with real estate. What I would look at, though, is something slightly else. Sitting behind all of those three facilities now, sitting behind those three headings, is what is artificial intelligence. And it's coming up very, very quickly and beginning to, I'm not going to say infiltrate, because that sounds like a bad word, but it's beginning to seriously adapt what we look at. I'll give you the example, the consumer example. So you've got Alexa from Amazon, Siri from Apple, Cortana from Microsoft, and Google's Assistant. And all of these are basically versions of AI. They're chatbots. And you ask them questions and they come back to you. But they're all basically artificial intelligence. Where they sit behind, though, are the likes of these super powerhouses that are sitting behind each of these systems. That's the likes of Watson's IBM system, an incredible system that has fingers in pretty much every pie you can imagine, from healthcare to real estate and everything in between. You've got Baidu's Minhwa system. Baidu's Minhwa system has just been found to be the greatest graphic identity recognition system in the world. So it can pick up faster than Google's system, which I'll come to. You've got the Microsoft Oxford project, which again is a whole system of AI and self-learning systems that's out there backing up what the new tech is being built on. And finally, of course, you've got Google's DeepMind. Now, when you ask about what does it mean, all of these are effectively a type of chatbot. If we're talking about chatbots, we're talking about those little systems that you go online and ask you a question. Hello, can I help you? I'm online. What type of product would you like to buy? Is it the right I'm here to help you. I'm John. It's not John. It's a system. And that system is already pre-calculated to answer your questions. So what? It's easy to use. I'm happy with it. You're happy with it. No one's lost their job. If you want to look at a research report and get a little bit scared, look at one by HFS Systems. HFS Systems looked at the call center market in India. Now, in addition to the fact that India is losing some of its industry to the Philippines, which is cheaper, they estimate that 480,000 jobs will be lost in call centers in India by 2021 from a combination of cheaper alternatives, like the Philippines, but also through chatbots and AI. That's almost 500,000 jobs gone in the next 3 years. So think on that. If you want to take it a stretch further, the CEO of Infosys, Vishal Sikka, when he was there, he resigned, I think, late last year. When he was there, he estimated that 60 to 70% of today's jobs across the board could be taken by AI. Now, don't forget, Infosys is a $10 billion company, 200,000 employees, and it works in both the IT and the business consulting space. So it's not just talking about call centers, it's talking about everything that it does as well. What was interesting is, shortly before he left, of the 200,000 employees, 11,000 were reallocated to other tasks. What was interesting about it is they weren't laid off because of the influx of AI into their own systems, they were reallocated. So there's an optimistic note in there as well. So if we talk a little bit more about chatbots and how they actually work, I'm not a technical guy, but I'll give you an example. I'll introduce you to Amelia. Amelia works for a company called IPsoft, and Amelia is a chatbot. Now, Amelia right now has two functions. Number one, it works for a Swedish bank called SEK, which basically acts as their customer interface. But more interesting, perhaps from our point of view, is Amelia also works as a call center operative for an oil and gas company tech service. Now, what's interesting is the results that have been had on the tech service. So this is people calling up with a technical issue from the oil and gas field about how it will impact and how they fix the problem. Typically, it took 55 seconds to get hold of, when you make the call, to get hold of an assistant on the other end. They brought in Amelia, it dropped from 55 to 2 seconds. Better than that, once the technical problem was brought up, the technical solve rate went down from 18 minutes to 4.5 minutes. So the AI system was telling you how to solve your problem. So, it's not just about AI and how AI is working in the interface. It's also about how we, as consumers, are looking at AI. So there is an attitude change that's happening from the industry as well and from people in general. So ServiceNow, which is a research company, did a survey in the US last year of about 350 HR managers. And they asked them a series of questions. Perhaps the most important response that they got was the question about how would your staff feel about chatbots as a HR function? 2/3 of the respondents said our staff prefer chatbots than speaking to the HR department because it's somehow defensive. So we are using AI in a completely different manner. They then said, do you agree that chatbots improve service levels? And 92% of them agreed that yes, chatbots do improve service levels. They then asked a third question, and the third question is, what systems are you bringing in terms of chatbots and when? And 70% of them said, in 2 years' time, they will have a chatbot system in their HR program of the top 350 HR managers in the US. So that's great. That's America, right? What does it mean to us here in MENA? Right now, MENA chatbot use in the region is around about 20% in 2018. If we stretch that out and we look at where it's going, we estimate, and there's a couple of clever people that estimated as well, that by 2021, it'll increase to 57%. So almost 60% of companies in 3 years' time will have a chatbot system operating for them, one way or another. And the job impact we talked about and how that begins to spread out. What's also interesting is, and this is the global number, it's estimated that the impact will be a 30% boost in profitability for those companies, but also on a global scale, because business process outsourcing companies, BPOs, are looking at the market in a different way. They're not seeing it as, they offer a cost reduction service. The BPOs used to be, I'll run a call center as a BPO. Now as a BPO, I'll run your chatbot for you. So they're looking at a massive uptick of 30% at least in their profit margins. So for those investors in the market, keep an eye on your BPOs. So the next question we came up and we wanted to discuss really was AI impact. So I wanted to look at that, how AI is impacting or has impacted our industry. So the first one I came across was the IBM Watson system. It runs a chatbot for Autodesks. For the architects in the room or the designers who come across AutoCAD and Autodesks, Autodesk is one of the, I think it's the largest CAD system available. And what happened in 2016 is it swapped over its personalized service to a chatbot service. It gets 150,000 queries a month. Over the phone, I call it, I can't get it to work. How do you help me? The current rating of that system by the people who call is 99% positive. So in terms of the reflection of what it's done, so what have Autodesk done? Autodesk now said, fine, that's one system we've got tucked away. What else can we do with it? So in 2018, they're going to launch sometime this year, maybe early next now, with the IBM Watson as well as the background AI system, a procurement manager. And the procurement manager is going to take over all of the contract and contract explorer systems and start amalgamating and running the contracts as well. Any contract managers in the room? Okay. So next up, we looked at the chatbots in our industry, what's affecting us. So back last year in Denver, there was a competition that was run where they basically had an external buyer looking at the Denver property market. I'm coming in, I want to buy a house, this is what I like. So they picked, the purchaser picked one home, and it gave a challenge. We said to the chatbot, you chatbot, I've got to find 3 similar homes, and you other agents, brokers in the American market, have got to find 3 homes each. And you've got to present them, and then the buyer will decide, blind, who's chosen the best properties that are similar to the ones that I like. 3 days, 3 competitions, 3 wins, all for the chatbot. Now, the way we looked at it at Colliers was slightly different. Rather than go, what are we going to do? Do we replace all our stuff with chatbots? We've now employed in our Atlanta office a tech consultant. Our tech consultant's job is to do the data analysis that the chatbot would do as the call comes in. So our brokers and our agents now know when you call up, oh, you're looking for X, Y, Z. The system already tells me. The personal contact is kept. It's improved our time to show properties. It's improved our time to close properties. We've reduced wasted time at seeing properties that aren't suitable. And more importantly, we get a higher success rate with clients because we're that much more effective. The other one that's quite scary for our industry, and this is a particular one for me because I'm both UAE and UK global RICS registered valuer, and I think we've got an RICS speaker coming in later in the day as well. So I pay my fees every year to Royal Institute Chartered Surveyors as a valuer. Automated valuation software. Now, automated valuation software comes in and basically looks at the market, collects all of the data, analyzing the pricing structures, and tells you what office, mall is worth. It's estimated, Frey and Osborne, the researchers from Oxford University, gave a rating of 0 to 1, with 1 being completely computerizable, if that's a word, and 0 being, no, AI can't do it, or computers can't do it. Valuers, appraisers, came in at 0.9 on the scale. So it's not particularly good news for me. So what did we do at Colliers? Well, we took a slightly different approach. About 4 years ago, we sat down with our Europe tech consultant. We have a separate one. And we said to him, OK, what do we do about this? So we now have a AVM system that runs out of our Netherlands office that works with the banks there. And we run portfolio valuations of about 200,000 at a go. Now, don't forget, and I think that Marwanza might be on later on today from RERA, and he's talked about this as well. That's all good and well, but in order to get to that point, you need to have a huge volume of data for the AI to interpret. We're not quite here yet in this region, but I am aware, for example, that the Saudis are looking at it, and I know that the RERA have been looking at it for a few years. So it's coming. So that's the scary story of what's going to happen, and we're all going to lose our jobs, and no one's going to have anywhere to work, and offices may as well go and close down. But then we come across co-working and flexi space. Now, this has been a really interesting story that's been happening as a trend around the world. Now, the interesting thing about co-working really is the growth story. So you can see behind, it's split into two things, spaces and members. Spaces is not the volume, it's not the area of size, it's the number of locations globally and their growth pattern. And members is the way that you interact with co-working space. And I'll cover that in a sec. But in broad terms, it's simply this. If you enter co-working space, the most common way now is a membership. It's almost like joining Fitness First. You take a membership, and with that membership, you can go to any location around the world. Location takes you in, you sit down, you have a desk, you have access to their facilities, there's a coffee corner, and off you go. So take a step back and let's look at where we come from in terms of co-working space. So the first call really was business centers. And business centers were set up 40-odd years ago by the likes of Servcorp, and about 30 years ago by Regis, both of which have been in Dubai for 20-odd years. And business centers were for the multinationals and the SMEs. It was called swing space. So I'm in my office, I need a bit more, but I don't want to take a whole floor in the building. I'll go and take a 1-year or 2-year lease in the center. It has a meeting room, it has a coffee machine, it has someone that answers the phone for me, it has Wi-Fi now, and I get my own little office and desk. And I can use it as an address. So that's the way that it was used. It was used for project teams. I'm going to go into Abu Dhabi. I've got a specialist project. I'm going to run for 2 years. I'll take the hidden business space rather than the full-term lease and spend the capital and the capex doing it. And it was also good for branch offices. I want to see the Egyptian market. Do I go in? Let me take a feel for it. What comes next? Co-working spaces came around started about 10 years ago, but really started to take off in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So co-working spaces was all that millennial trendiness. It was all about having a space that encouraged my creativity, that there'd be a Zen corner, and perhaps over there there'd be some sort of zone where I could meditate and I could have my coffee that would be hand-brewed by a one-legged man in Peru, and it'd be nice and safe and feel for me as a millennial. Now, what's really interesting is that co-working and business centers have effectively merged around the world to become flexible workspace. To give you an idea in terms of how quickly this merger has happened, let's take a separate company. So you've got Regis and you've got Servcorp, who've been around 40 and 30 years. The new big kid on the block that rivals them is a company called WeWork. WeWork was established in 2010, but it got its first injection of capital in November 2011, $1 million. 2011, $1 million. Last month, its market value hit $2 billion because it has merged the two type of functions. So now you've got these competing systems that are out there. So as I say, these are the keys that was reviewed by a company called DeskMag. What creates this flow of flexible workspace? Why do people want to be in flexible workspace? And as I said, if you look at it in cold, hard light of the hard-bitten day, thank you, Richard, that I would look at it, in actual fact, it's about two things. The two major ones are flexibility and cost. The parts about creativity and order has slowly slipped down the scale. So that's all good and well. That's all happening around the world. What extent is it happening around the world? So I spoke to our flexible workspace head in Hong Kong, and I spoke to our head of flexible workspace in Dubai, a guy called Hamish Troon. And I'm having a chat to the two of them. And Hamish said to me, "Have you seen our latest Hong Kong report?" "Oh, no." You know, who reads them? What was surprising was this. In 2017, of all the office space in all the major markets in Pac Rim, so that's all the way from New Zealand all the way through to India, all of it, 40% of the take-up was from serviced or flexible office providers. Right? So as an industry, they took 40% of the total amount of space out there. The numbers that you see in yellow is the volume of space taken in each of those markets. So of the total lease that year, it was 15 in Hong Kong, 21 in Sydney, it was 19, what number is that? I can't see. 19 in Singapore. To give an example, it was 22% in London. And it's staggering the volume of space that these guys are taking. What's interesting when we drag it back a little bit, though, is that's all good and well. It's a growing market. It's all going up and up. But what does it mean in terms of actual volume of space? Well, the grey number indicates the percentage of the total amount of office stock that industry is now occupying. 3% seems to be around about the average in the markets. So that's the global number. Where are we in terms of Dubai? Because this is expected to double globally. So we're going to run at 4 and 5 and 6% of the office market going forward. So Dubai flexi space, the co-working space that exists. Right now, not 3%, but under 1% of the market. It's 0.0 something, something, something. Right? So we're under 1%. So we've still got plenty of room to grow. But in terms of our growth, this is the staggering bit. 94% it's grown in the last 4 years. So we are seeing the industry here. It is here, but as a volume space occupier, it's not here yet. So flexible workspace. Why aren't we seeing it to the same extent, say, in Dubai that we are seeing it around the rest of the world? Well, the first one, quite simply, is licensing. Labor issues, licensing issues restrict the ease of which co-working space can be used. The second one is collaboration and flexibility. Hong Kong was slow to come to the market because a lot of the Hong Kong landlords sort of said, well, you know what, I don't need to do this. Because the way that the market operates and the operators look at it is they look to collaborate with the landlord. They don't necessarily always just take a straightforward lease on the space and then work their own magic on their co-working space. They say to the landlord, much like a hotel, we will work with you, we'll manage 2 of your floors in your building as co-working space. And so landlord's not getting a rent anymore. Now, that's a problem if you've got finance, but it's also a problem in the mindset, because the mindset is, well, why do I want to give it away? Hong Kong was slow to come to the market. It's picking up speed because landlords are understanding it is a critical component of what they want to do. The other one is really urban reconfiguration is where we're going to be going with this. If we look at, and I know that my colleagues from JLL will be talking a bit about the way cities are going to develop, and I know the architectural practices have got their own group on this as well. But if we look at where the world is going, the new phrase now is urban campus. And the urban campus is either vertical or it's a campus of various buildings. If it's a vertical building, I've got restaurant, I've got gym, I've got screen's gone. I've got restaurant, I've got gym, I've got the flexi space, and I've got traditional office space. Spread around in a campus situation, each one of those buildings does the same. So that sort of covers, we're losing jobs, there's a change in attitude, we're moving to flexi space, right? But I'm a little bit cynical on flexi space. I'm still a bit of an old guy. I've still got too much grey hair. I still believe it's a bit tree-huggy, it's a bit too friendly, it's a bit too lovey-dovey. So I wondered what was the other reason. Because when I look at my accounts, I look at what drives the bottom line. And this is the one that really surprised me. Now, you'll have to excuse me because it is really quite dry, but it is very, very important. So for every investor, every developer in the room, every landlord, every agent, you need to be aware of this. So as dull as this can be, please pay as much attention as you can. So IFRS 16 comes in at January 2019. January 2019, the global accountancy regulations, international financial reporting standards, as per the International Accounting Standards Board, right, bring in this change in regulations. First of all, it applies to all leases over 1 year. If it's under 1 year, it's under $5,000 or euros, it doesn't matter. Now think about that in terms of the connection to my digital membership of a flexi office space as opposed to taking a lease, because they don't count. It's not a lease. The liabilities that the IASB, the International Accounting Standards Board, reckon that will happen is that every single lease will move into a liability on a company's books. Every single lease. And globally, what that means is an addition of debt on companies' books as of January next year of around about $3 trillion. So how does it affect you, and where does it want to go? So on your right, these are the main issues of IFRS 16. Less than $5,000 doesn't count, forget it. Less than 12 months, forget it, doesn't count. So a short-term lease in a business center or a digital membership in a co-working space doesn't count. Leases become liabilities. Every lease now sits as a liability in your asset register. And all obligations are discounted back. And this is where it gets really hairy. So if you have a 20-year lease, all of that obligation is now seen as a debt. And your friend in the accounts department will discount all that back, put a weight and a figure in your books right now. So what does it mean? It means that who's going to want a long-term lease? What company is going to want to take into a long-term lease? If you don't have a long-term lease in a building, what does that mean to property values? When the valuers go out and look at the buildings, they say, oh, it's got a 20-year lease to Enron. Good name. It's got a 20-year lease to Enron, right? Now that company no longer wants to take a 20-year lease. It wants to take a 3-year lease. So the value is going to devalue that building because the security of revenue from that building is no longer there. What does that mean? Sales and leaseback and pre-finance. So all of the funds and the REITs that are coming out around the region, particularly in Saudi Arabia, are all taking 25-year leases from companies. Well, that was great before because the company P&L showed a healthy profit because the lease was off book. Now the lease is on book. What's going to happen to their position? Interesting enough, the value of the company goes up, the enterprise value goes up, but their debt ratio goes through the roof. So how does that company expand if its debt ratio is increased? So that's a problem. No one wants to take leases. What does it happen to the sales and leaseback market and the funds? And what does it happen to pre-finance for developers? Developer's going to pre-lease a building to HSBC they're going to build in downtown. He goes to the bank, he says, here's my lease. Or he goes to the bank for his mall leases, and I'll come to that in a second, and he says, listen, Mr. Banker, here are the leases. So you can finance me off the back of these leases because Alpha Tame are going to pay their rent. They're a great company. Now, Alpha Tame is saying, no, I'm not going to give you a 15-year lease, I'll give you a 3-year lease. So the changes are dramatic across the board. EBITDA up and net debt, discussed that. The retail one is an interesting one because the IASB Standards Board said that of all the type of industries most affected, those that will carry almost 100% debt increase average across their books will be retail companies. And as we know, retail is already in a pretty tough position now with all the changes that are affecting the market. The one bit of good news is that, if you can see it, is that tenants may buy. So the strata market in Dubai has been appalling. Let's not kid ourselves. No one wanted strata space. It was a bad idea because people wanted to have the flexibility to move up and down. Well, now if I'm a company, medium-sized company, why do I want to rent space when I can own it? If I'm going to have the liability of a debt, I might as well own it as well. So it works out quite nicely. So, just to summarize, I'm almost done. We're all going to be out of jobs. There's not going to be any more office space needed. Office space that is needed is going to be in a short-term lease, right? And thanks to the accountants, all our companies are going to make less money. Okay, here's my answer. Let's not panic just yet. Keynes was the preeminent economist of his time. Anybody that studies economy at any school, any grade of education, starts with Keynes. Right? He's in there, he's in the syllabus. He was a 1930s guy, the father of modern economic theory in many ways. But one of the things he said was just that, is that his big fear was that technology was advancing at such a rate that job alteration couldn't match it. I think he goes on to say, it's not the rheumatics of old age, but the growing pains of over-rapid changes. So are we in that over-rapid change period now? Now, when you look backwards, this was written in 1933. We've had TV, radio, internet, computers, mobile phones since then. And I look around the room, and everyone's still got a job. So we do catch up. There's a really interesting one that comes out of the interface of this. So Kai-Fu Lee, he comes out with a statement which basically says, look, AI is fantastic, it analyzes all this data, but at the end of the day, it's the personal touch, the human touch that goes on. For me, she's got a system, the Rana Al-Kalbi's got a system that analyzes data, and she says, and she works for a company called Activa, and she says that we're looking at, there we go. She says we're looking at face recognition going the next level to emotional recognition in the next 5 years. This is my favorite one of all. It's self-explanatory. Roy Amara, by the way, was one of the founders of Silicon Valley. The whole thing. So let's not just panic. What I will say is this. It is changing. Real estate is in a flux. We need to think about it. I know when I look at my budget for next year, I'm including a digital strategy in mine. So that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening. Hope it was interesting.